Well, good morning again. This is Patrick Halstead at Qdabra Software, and we are recording. I want to welcome you to our webinar this morning. It is 8:04 a.m. I got started 1 minute early. For those of you who are waiting, we are recording this. I want to thank you again for joining us. This is part two of our two-part webinar on querying large lists. I'm going to go through what I did last week. Before I do that, though, I want to quickly get a show of hands on who attended last week. So we'll do a quick one-question, 10-second poll here to see who attended last week. And we've got a few people who have not attended. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of how many people were here last week, and thank you for doing the quick poll. It looks like about 2/3 of you were here last week. Thank you for coming back. For those of you who are not here, we'll do a quick recap, and then we'll talk about this third technique, which is the focus of our webinar today. First off, you've got forms. You need to query large data, and how do you do it, right? So there are list limit sizes in 365, and there's some tricks. First off, there's 3 ways to do it. Today we're going to be focusing on the third, but last week we had 2 samples that we sent you. One, querying a large list with an index filter. Let's take a quick look at that. So I've got my 365 site here, and I presented this example first last week. Now this example is just a plain Jane InfoPath form here that I've added some indexes to, and I've actually added 2 fields to it. So I've got, this is where I'm at today. I'm in Kirkland. Now, if I don't add this to Kirkland City, it's going to fail. It's going to tell me, hey, the list is too large. The list threshold enforced by the administrator is too, you've exceeded it. If we do add the index column, though, it will work, and it's quite fast. Obviously, let's do New York here. I don't know, there's lots of zip codes in New York. That's one of them. We can also query all the zip codes in New York, and it'll give us back a list of zip codes here. Okay, so that's the first thing we showed last week. Now, how did we do that? So the key technique here is to make sure that your list is indexed. Let's go to that list. Let's take a quick look at it. The list I uploaded using Excel, and I need to go to my site contents here. It's not showing up in my recently used. So we've got zip codes 42,522 items. Keep that number in mind. And I can search for 10014 here. Let's see if it works. So it works. Well, it's obviously wrong. And we are filtering on the city, and I would expect that the, okay, so it's got all the Kirkland zip codes there. It's got this in a comma separate format, which is kind of strange. But the key thing with this list is that we were able to upload it because we set the index. Notice when we go to the list settings here, it's going to complain. It's going to say, hey, you're over the 5,000 threshold. What I said last week, and there's this nice little reference tutorial here that Microsoft provides that describes the different limits that you have with your lists. There's like a 5,000 limit, there's a 20,000 limit, and then there's a max limit, which is in millions, I think, or billions. But you can read about this here on their site. They just provide the link right there. First they talk about these limits at the top here. 5,000 is the max limit for views. 50,000 is the unique permissions limit. That used to be 5,000, and then 20,000 is the admin limit. So we got around the view limit by making sure that we indexed the list before it reached the admin limit, and that was by creating an index column. And you can see here I've got that one column here. Great question from Catherine at the beginning of class today on whether we can add a second index. You should be able to, but I haven't tried it. Okay, so that's the list, 42,000 items. And if we go back to the form is actually, let me just show you the form here in the designer. The form has a filter in it, and that's the key takeaway for creating the form. It's the key thing you need to do is have that filter. If you don't do the filter, it's not going to work. So let's show you and I'll include this sample again with the package this week if you fill out the survey, which is very short. So here's the sample I just showed you. Once again, the query button here has a rule on it, and the rule is setting the query parameter in the secondary data source. This is tied to the list. Setting the city equals to the city from the form. That's the main data source, right? And then it's setting the zip code, and then it's going to query that data connection. And this is just a standard SharePoint list data connection, right? And we could take a look at it here. Okay, so that's it right there. So I went into Excel, I uploaded this list. It took about a half an hour, and of course Excel was hung during that time, but it did succeed at the end. And the key thing, like I said, is once you start uploading it, just go back to the list when you see it start creating items, add an index before it hits 20,000. Okay, that's the first technique. Any questions on that? Just throw your questions in the question area. We'll take a look at them at the end. The second technique I showed was including the data as a resource file. And let's just take a look at that example. I know I have it here somewhere. So this is option number 2. And here, what we've done is we've taken that large zip code XML file, and we're including it in the form. So we're baking it in to the X2Send. And you can see here that the lookup is fairly fast. It's faster, of course, than the list lookup. We can compare this again to the list lookup. They're obviously, one of them is querying a list from 365, querying another list in 365. And the preview is running locally, and it's querying it all within memory. So you could expect it to be fast. Let's do this one again here. Just anyone want to throw me a zip code? I like to use these zip codes, and notice that if I try to open this form in the in the browser, it's going to complain. It's going to say the resource file is too large. This is a new thing. It used to work fine about a year ago, but now it doesn't. So the one caveat, the one big limitation of option 2 is it looks like it's filler only. For those of you who have 365, you can't use it in the browser. For those of you who have SharePoint on-prem, you can do it. You just need to either set the resource setting. I think the defaults actually will handle it. I think the defaults for 365 are lower. The limits are lower than they are with the on-prem install. What I wanted to show, though, is I wanted to show this first technique again and just time it against the internal one. So if you've got a zip code here, you can throw it at me. Looks like we'll look at Catherine's zip code. We'll figure out where Catherine's calling us from today, 01945. Of course, we don't know the city, so we have to go, obviously, this option is kind of nice because you don't need to have an index. And, well, Catherine, you're calling us from Pluto today. Just kidding. Let's see here. I've got to find the chat again here. Sorry about that. I lost my question area here. Thank you for doing that again. 01945. Yeah. So that is not in the database, and I'm not sure why. 32605. Let's look at Mark's. So Mark is calling us from. He's calling in from Gainesville, Florida. I hope that's correct, Mark. Catherine, we'll take a look at the database in a second and figure out why yours is not in here. And but you can see here that it is returning that very quickly. Let's take a look at marks again here. 32605. Yeah, I'm not doubting it's not a real zip code, but this database is just something I pulled offline, so it's quite possible that the database is missing the entry. So we're going to do 32605 from the browser here. Actually, let's do the city. So quite a lot of Gainesvilles, and including 32605. I don't see marks in the list, but it did return a lot of them. Okay, so those are the first two techniques. Now let's go back to our presentation. So once again, first technique, you're going to query the list using a filter. You're going to set that filter before you query it. It's key that you set the index filter, not just any filter. You just can't set zip code equal to whatever it is. You have to set the index, which is the city, first, and then the zip code, or you can just set the city. The cons of this approach, you have to upload that large Excel file, and you've got some limits. So if you go beyond 50,000 or whatever it is, you may have more trouble. It works fine with 42,522. There's some documentation on that in the presentation. Option 2, you can include it in your form. Like I said, this works from the browser if you're not using 365. Does not work in the browser with 365 due to the limits that they're setting. It's very fast. There is one clever technique when you're dealing with this option number 2, and everything is in the form, and that is to use the current filter. So when I tab out of this zip code, I've got a rule that's looking it up, and that rule is setting the city and the state based on the zip code that's chosen. And we're using this current function. I don't know if you can see this here on my screen, but we're setting it equal to the city from the secondary data source where the zip code is equal to current. And to do this, this is going to make the indexing a lot faster. I did explain why last week, but basically it's because it doesn't have to traverse that 42,522 item list more than once. It's just using the current context. The way you get that current formula is we just go into formula here and you just type in current, or you can look it up. If you go to all, you'll see it doesn't exist. You have to know it. That's why I'm telling you. You have to type it in. It is there. There's a lot of XPaths that aren't in the list. We talked about them in our training class, and we talked about them in our webinars. So that's the trick to make it super fast. Otherwise, it takes like 5 seconds to open it. Okay, so let's move on to the focal point of today's webinar, which is option number 3. We got a question here from Shane. If you're querying multiple lists, each one is less than 5,000, but the total is more than 5,000, do you need to set indexes on each to make it work? I don't believe so. I would say no to that question. That's a good question, though. Okay, and Shane, thanks for helping me with today's webinar. Option number 3, we're going to move the data to Azure. We've got an Azure account set up, and let me show you what that looks like. I have RDP'd a remote desktop into my Azure account, and here you can see I've got all my zip codes, including, let's see if Catherine's is in here. Nope, not it. It's the same. It's the data. It must be the data that we have from the online zip code database. But there's Mark's zip code 32605, and of course I can show all 42,000 of them. But what I want to do here is I want to actually, we've got a SQL database we installed, which is SQL Express. It's free. It gives you like 15 or 16 gigabytes of free data. You're not going to need that much. And then you fire it up. Basically, when you install SQL and your web service, because you're going to need a web service, we provide a free trial of DBXL to do this. You're going to need to configure the cloud. So you go up to the Microsoft portal let's just see if we can find it here. There's portal, and then there's, I think it's Azure Microsoft Azure. And I've done this before. I think it's going to automatically get my credentials, maybe not. Portal.azure.com, that's what it is. So when you log into your Azure portal, if you haven't done this before, you'll have to create an account. And then what you do is you go into, where do you go? I'm waiting for something to appear. You go to New, I believe, and then you're going to create a compute VM, and I would basically go with the standard Windows server, so that's going to be at the top here, data center, and then what you'll do is you'll pick the version, and the key recommendation here is to use like a larger one at the very beginning. I think like A5 or A3 or something, and then you can remove it, you can reduce it down after you've got up and running. But if you use a larger one at the beginning, then it's going to install faster, and you don't have to worry about the time it takes. Let's see if I can find my VMs here. I always get confused by this user interface, and I don't use it a whole lot. Anyway. Yeah, so you're going to want to just, one tip I wanted to tell you here was to go in and when you create it, make sure that, I don't know why my tester's account is listed here, but when you create the Azure account, make sure you make it a large one first, not really super large, like I think A3 is fine, and then you install everything, and then you can set it back to A1, just fine. So yeah, that's the one trick there. Okay, so here's our data then. We uploaded this 42,000 row Excel spreadsheet to SQL Azure. We installed our web service, and then we create a form. Let's see, I need to go back to my desktop. And we're doing this from the desktop, so the RDP is needed, the remote desktop is needed to create the database and install the software. It takes about an hour. And then I've got a form here that is going to query that data. Now, the form is really simple. It just, once again, has a zip code, has one field. We're going to query the zip code. And it then has a rule that queries data connection. That data connection is configured to point to the Azure database, actually the web service on top of it. The web service is called QueryDB with key, and this is one of our, this is kind of a nuisance when you have to type this in like 3 or 4 times. But eventually it succeeds. And now we're using a UDC file. We've converted the connection to a UDC file, so you don't see the web service URL here. You just are able to configure it in terms of the query XML. So let's take a look at that UDC file. Underneath data connections, you'll see that we uploaded this QueryDB with user key just yesterday. And if I open this in the browser, it should, let's just save it locally, and we'll copy this UDC file into the today's webinar. We're going to include this with the webinar. And then we'll just take a look at this in Notepad++. I don't want to do all of them. I just want to do one of them. Okay, well there's all of them. One second here, let me do this again. Okay, once again, edit with Notepad++. And here you can see that it is connecting to that web service running on Azure and is calling the QueryDB with user key web method. And it's passing in some parameters. Now we don't have to set any kind of authentication. We're going to use this basically anonymously, and that's why we pass in a key, because we don't want to have unsecured access to our database. So we have to create the key first, and we have a document on that. It's very easy. You just call a web method passing in your name, and it creates the key for that username, and then they can use it. And if you don't have, if you have lots of users, you just create one for everyone, and then you can use that. And that's the key that you saw during the config step. Okay, so once you have that created, then you can go up here and preview it. We'll preview it first. Now, previewing it from the filler is going to require that login prompt again. So I've published this out again to the browser, and this is a slightly better experience. The browser then allows us to query, and it's going to pull back the values, if we pull back, let's pull back 32605. So it's quite fast. You can see here, and I'm not having to worry about indexing. It's a lickety split. I mean, it returned so quickly that time I couldn't even measure it. So let's take a look at, let's change the database and watch it change. So let's go back to our RDP, and we're going to upgrade Mark to live in a different location here. Actually, we're going to upgrade myself here. So we're going to change this. We're going to change the, notice it's returning the latitude and the longitude. I don't know if you saw that. But that's part of the database. And actually, this is the old form. So let me open up the new one. I think I need to republish it or something. Because you see I've got latitude and longitude there. So let me repub it. This will take 30 seconds, hopefully. And while we're doing that, I'm going to change the latitude. I'm going to change the city for this zip code here. I think I can do this. I need to edit the rows. I need to go up to my table here and edit the top 100, 200 rows, I guess. So we'll just change one of these here. I could find 98033, of course, but let's just change. Let's change 10200 from New York to Pluto, and then we will, of course, make sure the change sticks. That's 10200. Don't forget. And now we should have that form published. We can go out here to the browser. I think we can. And let's type in 10200, and it's still New York. Let's see, what did I do wrong here? And I'm wondering if it didn't take the change. Let's go to the RDP, and let's search down there for 10200. Yeah, it didn't take the change for some reason. Maybe there were two in there. Save. Okay, let's see if we can force this. Not sure why it's not letting me update in real time, but you can see here that it's still stuck with that old value. Oh, we could delete it. Basically just want to show you that it is live. That's my goal here. Okay, it's not getting deleted either. But trust me, it is live. and I did just, I just need to figure out how to edit it. We can edit the data as well from InfoPath. I haven't presented that recently. We'll probably do that in the future, but it is easy to do this. We have a couple customers who are using Azure to not only query data, but also submit. Most of our customers are using to query large data sets, but we do have a handful of customers that are doing both, round-tripping it. So that's the quick demonstration. Let's just take a look at the form again, and just to recap here, I'll just recap and we'll show the form. The form, like I said, when we tab out of zip codes, it's automatically setting the query XML. And that query XML is controlling the database that we're querying, the table in the database. It's actually specifying the columns that we're returning, including the latitude and longitude. And it's filtering on zip code. So it's saying, look, I want you to give me a query the database, and give me only the values where the zip code is equal to that. And we could change it. We could change it to city, and it would do the same thing. It would query the city column instead. But we've done the zip code lookup. Now this query string can be created. We have a tool that allows you to create these query strings. So it's relatively easy to create, and you can see here that I have my tool. And if I want to change the filter from zip code to city, I just go in here, city, and of course I don't have a city field, so I'm just going to use the same one. And I click Build Now and copy this third XML string into my form, and I just change this. And so we'll just change this to the new one. See if this works. And of course, to reflect that change, we will call this city. And we'll preview. Now previewing it is going to have to, you're going to have to basically connect to the web service, and you're going to have to type in your credentials again. This is the nice thing about doing it from the browser, is that you don't have to do this extra step here. I actually prefer to do it from the browser, but you can do it from the preview, and there you see all of those Kirkland zip codes. Okay, actually we didn't include the zip codes in the table. One kind of nice trick here when you're dealing with tables is if you want to rebind it, it's easier to include those values as columns if you click on rebind, and then you can sort it. Like you can move this up and down. We don't need the city if we're querying for the city, so we'll just do that, and then we'll preview it again. Will it remember my credentials? Of course not. And there you see, I can just quickly change that binding because I'm getting all the data back. Okay, any questions for me on that? I'm going to quickly recap with the slide deck. And once again, the pros and cons. For this technique, very unlimited. You can have millions of items. It's very fast. And you can do submit as well as query. Lots of features there. We include a whole bunch of features in this web service. And the web service is cheap. We use it for our consulting projects, and mainly we charge for support time more than anything else. It starts at I think it's $6.95. You get a free version of it if you attend our training class, free version of the beginner license, which does support querying. It doesn't give you any support, but you can install it and use it. And then you get other features, like we've included PDF generation recently. So you've got a server-side PDF generation that will email those PDFs to your customers. It does take an hour to set up, like I said, and that's SQL Express, Azure, and the web service. We've got a document on it. It's pretty easy. We can step you through it. Once again, you need some kind of a web service on your database, and that's the demo we did today. Any questions for me? We have questions, looks like. Go back to my question wheel here. Okay, so Catherine, you're saying I typed in your zip code wrong. I'm sorry about that. We can try it again. I don't think that it's in there though. But any other questions for me today? I'm just going to go back to the site here and type in 09145. Yes, you're not in the database. For some reason, it doesn't know you exist. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for 0109. Did I type it in that wrong? Was I that bad? 01945, right? Okay. Yay! Sorry, you are in the database, and I did type it in wrong. I'm sorry about that. Of course you're in the database. Everyone's in the database. Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank you all for joining us. This is recorded. We'll upload this to YouTube. We'll get the package out. Very quick 4 or 5 question survey at the end. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Let's see, what are we doing next week? We are doing InfoPath forms for projects. We're going to show you how to create a set of forms, SharePoint forms, InfoPath forms that manage projects. We've got 6 forms to look at. Obviously projects, milestones, tasks, but also timesheets, invoice requests, and statements of work. So we've got those 6 forms that we'll walk you through next week and show you how you can create a composite solution using multiple forms. You don't want to have everything in one form. You want to actually break it out into manageable chunks. So we'll be talking about that next week. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. We enjoy doing these webinars. If you got any feedback for me, let me know, and hope to see you next week. Take care.